Hey everybody, welcome to another math video. For this video, I'll be talking about trigonometric inverse functions. Okay, so we talked about trig functions in a different video. For this one, I'll be talking about their inverse functions. Okay, so these are the things we'll be doing. Okay, pretty simple. We'll go through an example also. Okay, so let me just remind you of the 6 trig functions that we use: sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent. So when we talk about the inverse functions, we normally use 3 basic ones. And the main reason why we would use the trig inverse, or the inverse versions of these trig functions, is to find the angles. So let's say you're given a triangle, a right triangle, with sides that are given, and you don't know what the angle is between a couple of sides or a certain angle, and you need to find it out. So we use the inverse functions here. So you'll see them like this with a -1 in the exponent area. So it's not read as sine to the -1, cosine to the -1, tangent to the -1. It's actually read as inverse sine, inverse cosine, and inverse tangent. Okay? So when we're dealing with numbers, then we can probably say they're to the power of -1, but it really depends on context. So in this case, the -1 in the exponent for the trig functions means we're talking about the inverse. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. So we're going to calculate the measure of theta in this right triangle, and we're going to round to the nearest tenth if we have to. So there's a few ways we can do this. So you notice we have all 3 sides given. So you can use any one of the 3 basic trig functions. Okay, so let's say you wanted to do sine. So sine of the angle is going to be 4/5, because remember, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And the side opposite of the angle is the one that's across from it, right? So to solve for the angle, we're going to use the inverse function, which is inverse sine. And this is where you'll need a calculator. And since we're dealing with, in this case, we're doing this in degrees. So set your calculator to degrees and just type this in, and you get about 53.1 degrees. Okay, now say you wanted to use cosine, and that's okay too. We can use cosine because we have the adjacent side labeled, so we can use cosine if we wanted to. So we'll do the same thing. You use the inverse function, so inverse cosine, and then you type this into your calculator, and you should get approximately the same measure, or you should actually get the same measure. Now let's say you wanted to use tangent instead, so same thing, we use tangent. Okay, inverse tangent, type that into your calculator, and you should get the same measure. So no matter which way you use, if you have all the sides given, you can use any of the trig functions. Okay? Now let's try this example. So a plane is flying at an elevation of 6,000 feet and is 10,000 feet from its destination. Find the angle of elevation the plane is flying at, and if necessary, round your answer to the nearest tenth. Okay, so here's our picture. So let's say A is the plane's destination. So it's flying at an elevation of 6,000 feet, and it's 10,000 feet away from its destination. So that's this distance here. If it said it's at a vertical distance of 10,000 feet from its destination, then that would be this side here. But it's not saying that. Okay? Now the angle of elevation, so think of this side here, this bottom side, as like your horizon. When you elevate, you're going up, right? So going up gives us this angle right here, angle A. Sorry about that, it's kind of blocking there. So angle A is going to be our angle of elevation. So because we don't have all the sides labeled here, we're only going to use a particular trig function. So we have angle A, which is missing. We have 6,000 feet, which is the opposite side, and we have hypotenuse, 10,000 feet. So we have hypotenuse and the opposite side. The basic trig function that we have that uses that ratio, or uses those 2 sides in the ratio, is sine. So our initial setup will look like this. Okay, so it's different from the previous example because this one doesn't have the adjacent side labeled. So we can only use a particular trig function. Okay, but we do it the same way. Inverse sine in this case, and I'm going to reduce that fraction too. And then type this in the calculator, and you should get roughly 36.9 degrees. Okay. So it's pretty simple, write it down, set it up. Make sure you got the numbers in the right spots. Okay, so if you get an error when you type this in, that means your top number was bigger than your bottom number, and you can't do that when you're doing sine. Or cosine for that matter. Okay, so that's pretty much it. This is what we did. Hope those examples really help, because math really is about doing the examples. You can get all the explanations all day, but unless you see it in action, it doesn't click. So I hope make it click. Well, that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.